To be fair, Peter, that was only part of my title. So no, I'm going to increase mine to be as. So I know we talked about where we should go from here. I guess we're just conversationalizing.
Yep.
Um,
Well, the journal kind of leaked our whole big story. So I
Right,
don't know what we're
right,
gonna
right.
do now. I mean,
where did they get all that
Oh my
information,
God.
Peter? I don't know how they got that.
Damn.
Do you want to just? I do have a question.
All
Just what has the journey for NBC, even before we get into our partnership? What has
Yeah.
the journey for NBC been like in terms of going? Because you have that portion of your title,
Yep,
that equity and inclusion. What has that journey been like for you guys?
Well, I've had the privilege of being in the company for now almost 18 years, and it's been a really interesting journey because on the one hand, we have this phenomenal reach. We reach 8 out of 10 multicultural households in the U.S. So somehow touch one of our products. We have a brand, Telemundo, that I've had the privilege of working with, that obviously is dedicated towards Hispanic. When it came to Black audiences and the Black community, we were less organized. And so when I got a chance to take on this new role, I was looking at some of the things we were doing at Peacock, and it was just so obvious. It was sitting right in front of us. Some of our top shows, including Bel Air, focused on Black excellence. And we have this history of doing these cultural heritage months, including Black Heritage Month. And I was like, why are we doing this 1 month of the year? Not to disrespect it. So I think our journey has evolved. And it starts with the fact that we already have this relationship with the audience.
And we began this journey. So the question you told me I had to ask you. No, I'm just kidding.
Jeez.
No, but it's interesting because in reality, when we sat down, it was very clear from my standpoint because this has been we were almost 2 years old. We're 2 years old like a week ago. And so we had seen what was working and what wasn't. So I think we were very clear in like the only way for this to work is kind of along these lines. And you guys were already prepared. Like we didn't have to bring you over the journey. It felt like you guys had already we were almost looking for each other. We just didn't know. So how did you guys? Yeah.
I just think it helps because we've come to this literally this location, this moment in life from very distinct but united paths of knowing what the difference is. You've worked as major marketing executive at Pepsi and Mondelez, and so you've seen it. I've worked on the media side. I've seen it. And so it was interesting because it was one of the fastest partnerships ever. We sat there like, I see that, you see that. Okay, great. Let's make it happen.
Right. And, fast because the size is to me, it's like, how do we accomplish what we accomplished in such a short period of time? But you guys were already prepared and ready. So I guess my other question is so the journey you guys have, been on, but inside the organization, kind of how important is that?
I think it's very important. I mean,
you're like, I got it in my title. It better be important.
I'll put it this way. So the article broke yesterday. The amount of notes I've gotten from internal people working inside my company that are rallying behind it, either members of the community or allies of the community, has been awesome. And to be honest, it reaffirms why this is so important. Yes, the audiences and the advertisers, but how about our employee base?
Right.
That's been fantastic.
Right. It's interesting that you say that because I have a good friend who, and this is very smaller than what we're talking about here, but has a number of shop rights, I think 40 shop rights, and he owns all the Fairways and Gourmet Grocer in New York. And we're trying to do a program with him. He said, before we do any of that, I really just want you to do something with our employees because, to your point, I think sometimes we forget how important, well, you guys clearly didn't forget, but to that point, how important it is for our own people to see kind of what we're doing. And I will say, I think that you guys deserve a ton more credit than even that story could kind of discuss. And again, I'm biased, of course, clearly biased. But the only reason why I say that is because the investment level, not from a dollar standpoint, but from the programming that is a part of our deal exclusively, nobody else has stepped up and actually put that kind of skin in the game around something like this. And the scale and scope of it is something that we haven't seen in the industry to date. And so I just want to say, thank you guys and thank you for believing in us. Don't get me wrong, we got a lot to accomplish, but
No, but what's exciting also, and back to you, what you built in just 2 years is amazing. In order for this partnership to work, somebody has to be connecting with the marketing community in ways you are. Somebody has to be reaching out, and what's been exciting is that you're really doing it. A lot of people have talked about it,
right.
but you're actually doing it, and that also makes all the work worthwhile.
Right. And I'll tell you, the hardest thing on this journey has also been we have to take different routes to get to this place that we all want to get to faster. And so having partners that, allow us to reach much further allows us to get there much faster. And so I think that's been the good piece of it. So, okay, that's where we were.
Yep. Okay.
Now I guess the question is you don't know this, but what I'm more interested about in this partnership is, I think like 2 months from now, and I'm like, hey, we've got a great idea for this show. Can we get just, hey, you don't know that's coming yet, but but what, so where do we go from here?
Well, I think the first part is really working with the marketing brands that are already part of your family. The second part is going to be what can we do back to your point with shows, with creative, with really continuing to amplify and elevate different voices. One of the fun things in Peacock is that we just have an enormous amount of growth still to come. We're only ourselves 3 years, so you're
Right.
2 years.
Right.
Peacock's only 3 years, and in that growth plan, there's a lot of content, a lot of stories yet to be told. So, and we have already a very strong connection with the community. So having the credibility and the talent in front of behind the cameras just helps. So I'd like to see us, lean in even more.
And that's the piece that I'm excited about.
Right.
Like, I think, we've got, there's thousands of good creators. No, but I just feel like there's a world, because what also is exciting for me is that, and we kind of talked about this when we sat down, and you guys had already realized this, but I think there's a win-win beyond just, hey, the advertising community and the growth, is that I think Peacock is going to continue to build an an audience base, because now we have a chance to bring in a much greater volume of content that speaks authentically to them. And, I think this year at Cannes, the most important message that I feel around this space is that, look, you've got an audience that has $1.7 trillion of spending power. Most brands index maybe 10 or 20%. And if I told you that and I didn't tell you who they were, you go, where's this mythical audience? And like, how do I find them? And that's what's sitting, but people haven't taken the time to build the infrastructure. And in our case, infrastructure, I think, is twofold. One, I think it's the pipes. Yeah. And I don't want to say you're because you're pipes and programming. But, programming is so important. And what people don't realize is, look, NBC reached in the 50s women. But P&G worked with you guys to actually create soap operas because it was programmed that actually connected to that audience. And I see this as kind of that soap opera moment. It sounds very cliche, but
I know, but it makes sense. And I think, again, that's where having a partnership, it makes a big difference, because we can actually create things together. Some of my favorite projects I've done in my time at NBCUniversal have been when you break the mold of what's already existing, you create new things together. And again, if you think about streaming in the US is multicultural, just full stop. It is already where the consumer base is. Just to your point, how do we create stories that resonate, that people feel seen? They're like, oh wait, that's me, that's my story, not someone else's. And that's, again, I think with the brands that you're working with, we have a fantastic opportunity to tell those stories.
And I think, they have a chance to be now inside of endemic content. And what I also appreciate about, your programming is that you guys have expanded. For many years, there was a lot of programming that showcased the archetype of what, and even Bel Air, because it's such a different twist on, the original, it's showcasing a whole different side, but of people who are multifaceted in the first place. But and so you guys have actually moved in a world where it allows us to paint creative characters in all types of light that aren't necessarily what you catch or see or have seen for a long time.
Well, it's interesting. So we've done a fair amount of studies on understanding the multicultural consumer. And in the past, the results were, I just want to see an image that looks similar to me. I want to see a family that I can relate to. Now, this latest studies we did as early as January of this year said, it's not enough just to show me visually. I want some complex narrative. I want stories that are nuanced. I want things that are deeper than just, oh, check the box. There is a picture that looks like me. And that's something that has been a great challenge to the creative community, because then they're saying, wait a second, I can't just have now this collage of faces on a screen. I need to have storylines, which is why, for example, Bel Air, the other one is Best Men, Final Chapters. Like, these are really deep, nuanced stories where people were like, oh, I love that plot line. And for some, they're members of the community. For others, they're just like, this is awesome content.
Well, I think that to me is the most important point that gets lost. And you know, so one is, and I hate to use the word, but you actually said it, that I'm seeing more than, no, I was going to say, I don't like to use the word representation, because what you said, to be seen.
Yeah.
I tell, when I was working in South Africa, we were relaunching Cadbury, and Cadbury had never done an ad with an all-black cast in it. And so the obvious is, why don't we just do an all-black cast and see how that works out here? And the business went on fire. But of course, because people saw themselves. But at the same time, it didn't alienate those. Right. And that's Black Panther is a great example. There were I know you don't probably love me talking about that, but
I like good content.
Right, okay. There were superhero movies, you know, before that, and but the moment you actually show characters that have complex narratives, and I feel seen, largest movie, but you're also not losing a piece of the audience.
I think if you have a good story and a good storyline, that's really what keeps people in. You might get attracted at first because the topic or the thing might be interesting, but the story itself is really what holds you in there. And that's in streaming too. I mean, we're talking about hours and hours of content, and we can tell if someone's like, oh, they watched 10 minutes and we're like, see ya.
And it's interesting because at your upfront, even if some of the other networks are in here, I don't care. It was one of the best. It was by far the best opening. I mean, I thought Ted was
having Ted is like, I mean, he got away with murder.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was literally, I think he literally killed somebody on the stage. It was pretty impressive. But you guys said something which I thought was interesting, which was, hey, you know, basically the underlining message was ad-supported television is, you know, is always going to be a big part of this equation. So how has the streaming, you know, how has that journey been?
Well, it's interesting. So when we launched our big 2 years ago, we launched with advertising from the beginning, and everybody poo-pooed us and said, oh my God, why would you have advertising? You're going to ruin the content. And the truth is that now everybody's trying to copy us and do that. And the reason is it funds better content. You get, you know, that dual revenue source, which other areas like cable television and even broadcasts with retrans have enjoyed for so long. It's something which allows you to get the best writers, the best talent in front of and behind the camera. So we've done that. The interesting part is that because we launched that way, we cleared all the content from the beginning to be both SVOD and AVOD. In our competitive set, the problem they're facing is they don't have the rights. So you can watch certain shows on competing streaming sites, but this community here, the marketing community, can't have any part of it. So it's like, they're like, oh yeah, great, XYZ launched. Like, yeah, but you can't come anywhere near in that content. In our case, we do. And so it just allows for, again, when you do come forward, which I know you will, with a cool story or a cool content opportunity, we can be great. We can launch this because we can fund it from both a subscription part and an advertising fund. And
as you guys continue to see, you know, the streaming business grow, what is the response from the marketing community?
Well, I think, to be honest, at first when we launched, because we launched later, the response was like, Peacock, what are you guys doing? What's happening? Are you guys coming to the party a little late? And then Then we had the Olympics and the Super Bowl, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're just doing good because of that." And then we started to have these massive hockey stick things. We were the fastest growing streamer in all of last year. This year has continued the hockey stick. We're up to almost 80 million monthly uniques. So that, I mean, now you're at a place where marketers just cannot ignore it. Our upfront was all about like, this is where you need to start your streaming plans and build everything off it. And that's why we're so excited to partner with you, because it automatically makes the conversation that much easier, because it's not like we're saying, oh, we're some little small property. We're very scaled, yet we can do very precise, data-driven, targeted campaigns.
Yeah, talk a little bit about data, because I think that to me was very exciting too. Just kind of hearing the data journey and the story. So,
Yeah. So because
the first thing you guys were like, okay, we love this idea, but also can we be the data platform underneath everything you do? And I was like, wow, okay.
Well, because the thing is, for us, we're about scale and precision. So we're like, all right, we can work with marketers at scale, but we also want to be able to zoom in certain groups. We have a product called NBC Unified, which pulls together all the visitors to our theme parks, tickets from Fandango, things with media properties, and allows a chance to see clusters of groups where we'll be able to say, oh, you're a fan of this, a fan of that. How do we work with Group Black? How do we work with partners to be able to basically connect with that and learn and keep iterating. So it's a journey. We're far from done, but I'd say we're pretty motivated by where we are today.
And then when you think about Peacock, what you asked us, what's the future of our partnership? But where does Peacock go?
World dominance.
Right, world dominance. Do you guys have a global audience?
We actually do have a European footprint. We just announced expansion into India, and we're looking at a number of different global opportunities. The thing that's interesting with our launch is it, again, because we launched later and we launched behind a lot of other folks, while others are cutting back because they're having major cost restrictions, we've just announced doubling down and doubling our investments. So, our global opportunities are quite large, and even in the U.S., what we're investing in versus our competitive set is very exciting.
But it's interesting because when I was
I used to actually call on you when I was in ad sales.
Right.
That's how long we've known each other.
And I think it was with you and Linda. We were trying, because you have an India presence.
Yeah.
I think we were trying to do kind of a global deal, but for many of you guys, it was hard to really truly have a global footprint. But now with streaming, I feel like that gives you a real opportunity to expand your wings, so to speak.
Well, what's funny is in the past, you'd have to have this major global distribution plan, and now fans find the content. So you're like, all we're doing is trying to catch up with the fans of our show. And when we launched like our Hey You product in Europe, it was like the fan base for some of the Bravo content was already there. They're like, I watch these shows anyway. Thank God you're making them easier. Right.
And how are marketers lining this up against linear?
We're seeing that video is just becoming more and more of a united opportunity. We have a thing called One Platform, which basically puts together all of our screens, all of our touch points. And at first when we launched it, I think the marketing community was not as ready for it. Now, several years in, like, yes, I want to be able to move my creative across the entire footprint.
So just jumping back, so you talked about Telemundo, we talked about our are you guys driving in this direction for other, I know, because part of our partnership is also the ability to bring to life some of the other, diverse groups and segments, that we can bring to market to help scale as well. It's not our exclusive, but it's there. So talk about what you're doing in kind of those other diverse segments.
Well, it's a personal passion point of mine. Right. I think that we already reached this community. They're still underserved. I think for the Hispanic community, there's still a lot more we can do, and we're looking at it from the lens of a 200%er. So I'm 100% Latino, but I'm also 100% from Chicago. Right. So how do I find programs?
Sorry about that other 100%.
All right, Miami. Right. But how do you find, again, content that resonates? That's, again, not the stereotypical telenovela or a soccer match. Like, what else can we do? What stories? And I think that's one of the other areas that we're very leaned into. It's Pride Month, so we're focused on how do we better serve the LGBTQ plus community, which I'm a member of, and I want to see us continue to advance. So there's a lot of work still to be done. I'm happy we've made some progress, but still a lot to be done.
But no, and I think that that's the point, is that complex storytelling that shows all facets of cultural knowledge and authenticity. And that's really what I think, is the real opportunity. And also finding those spaces and places that, like, I give an example. So Blackish, there's in the very first episode, they walk by and, it's two black guys and they do the nod. And so, see, you might not even know, but the nod is like a legitimate thing. So I'm in like Singapore for my first my first Asia trip. And there's this black guy coming down the escalator and I'm going up and I'm saying to myself, don't look, don't look, don't look. And of course we look and it's like, and it's basically like, I know you're here in case something goes down. Yeah. I know there's I'll find another one of you. And that, when I saw that piece, I was like, see, now that is like a true cultural insight where I was like, okay, and I think it's those pieces that allow for fans to actually now I'm engaged. Now this is actually something that's representative of my life. Like, I look at some of the other stations that are targeted. We won't mention any, but it's not my life. It's not even close to. It's an archetype of what they think my life.
Well, but that's because you got to get people in the writers' rooms that actually understand what the nod is. They understand what the equivalent is in all the other communities. Because every group has the same thing. If you walk in a room and you're sort of sizing things up, like, okay, who in here is it I can resonate with or relate to, and so that feeling. That identity can only get written by someone who understands.
Who has that identity, right? And I think it's interesting because, Hispanic is such a huge group, but yet for so many years it's been one format that we've hoped would drive,
But here's interesting, where a group black opportunity, the intersectionality. So I remember a few years ago,
Afro-Latina.
we were doing Black History Month across all of NBCUniversal, and I was at the time at Telemundo. I'm like, so what's our Telemundo thing? And they're like, oh, Telemundo wants to be part of it. I'm like, yeah, hello. Why would we not want to be it? And so,
I agree.
And that was like 5 years ago. And now we're seeing more folks. How is Group Black looking at that intersectionality of different communities?
So, the Afro-Latina conversation is a big conversation for us. If you look at our collective, somebody like Gary, who runs the largest multicultural podcast, Pod Digital, he is really probably the one member that's doing the most around bridging that intersectionality very deliberately. But we can have another conversation stage right. But and it's interesting because from the very beginning, that was so on my mind, which was these two groups work so symbiotically together because, whether you have Afro-Latina, which is the direct, but the cultural, I would say, not similarities, but differences from pure U.S. culture kind of also brings them together. But we decided as the tip of the spear to kind of focus on African American, but that is, without giving away too much, clearly something that I me, I'm always like, okay, where are we going? Like, where's this ship go
we're going to talk about stage right. That deal's gone. We have to do 5 more. Okay. Ink's not even dry.
So, we're hearing excitement from clients in the market. The news definitely opened up, more, to your point, all throughout the evening. People congratulating, but also wanting to know more. How can we do more? How can we partner more? Are you hearing, I know you said internally, but have any clients in the last 16 hours? And if so, who are they? So we can.
I'll trade that list with you. No, I won't say the exact company, but the head of one of the largest media holding companies pulled me aside yesterday. I was like, thank you, because you're basically making our job easier to fulfill a commitment that we've made. And that's really at the core of what we're trying to do. Is there's been a lot of great commitments made in the marketplace, and this is now a perfect, easy to use vehicle to be able to see it through. And hopefully when we're sitting here a year from now, we're like talking about all the amazing work that's been done, award-winning work that it's been done in the space.
And the thing that I'm excited too is because, you know, we part of this will help us continue to fund content that continues to, you know, come onto platforms. So I think that a big measure of this ultimately is going to be, you know, have we expanded the amount of advertisers that are participating, but also have we expanded the amount of diverse voices that now have a platform at scale? And that was always our whole thinking was, you know, how do we find general market properties and put diverse voices at scale? Because that's really the unlock. And the more that we can do, then, you know, I think the far better the world will be. But ultimately, I think it'll bring more of this audience to the place that's actually investing in telling their story. So I'm also excited about, you know, seeing your business grow beyond just the advertising. I want to see.
I agree.
So
I have a question back for you. One second.
Okay.
Group Black a year from now. Where do you want to?
Well, a year from now, I hope I'm right here with you.
All right.
Because if not, then you know, that didn't work out. No. It's so hard. It's so interesting because our business changes. You know, I shouldn't say changes, but I think a year from now we are sitting here. We have brought the most amount of diverse voices onto, you know, NBC platform in a very short period of time. And you know what I really want a year from now, honestly, Peter? I know this sounds weird. I really want to be here at this event having conversations not just about diversity and inclusion, but about what great work looks like, so that we don't, you know, because I feel like, okay, that's great. We you know, we need to accomplish this journey, but now how do we do it with excellence? And what does just great creativity look like? And how do we get past, you know, having to say, you know, are we showcasing the right stories for us? No. Are we now telling those stories in the best way humanly possible? And that would be my dream. So
Great. Love it.
Excellent.
Okay.